Hello, I hope everyone's doing well. In this SFM tutorial, I'm going to be demonstrating how to cel shade within SFM and Photoshop. So cel shading is basically a method of eliminating the 3D aspect of a render and giving it a nice 2D look by basically having two shadings, or probably more, but we're going to be doing two, which is going to be the base and the shadows. So I'm going to be demonstrating how to do this today. You're going to be needing a software that supports blending modes. In my case, I'm going to be using Photoshop, but any software works that supports blending modes and hue saturation and all that basic stuff. I'm going to link a couple in the description that are free to use. Stuff like Photopea or Pixlr.com or even GIMP. These can work. So let's get into it. In front of you at the screen right now, you should be able to see a couple of examples of cel shading. A couple of them are created by me, and another bunch of them are created by very talented people within the SFM community. So I'm going to be trying to demonstrate how to create something like this. This is going to be as basic as it can be. Nothing too complex, nothing too complicated. At least that's my goal within making this video. I hope it works out for you. Let's get into it. Alright, so what you want to do now is open up Source Filmmaker and create a basic composition with a character doing whatever pose you like. Try to avoid not adding anything in the background, because the background, we're going to leave it last. You can, but you're just going to have to do the shading on the background too, and it's going to be a bit too much work. So personally, I would just try to avoid working on the background in the meantime. I also recommend using a map with no lights to create your cel shading. In my case, I'm using the map Scene Build Huge Void, link in the description if you want to subscribe to it. But in general, try not to add anything in the background, use a map with no lights, create a basic pose. The pose that I'm going with is from a reference from Dragon Ball FighterZ, the video game. Piccolo doing this, showing off his claws, I guess. I'm not sure exactly what he's doing, but yeah, just put together a scene. I'm going to be skipping this part where I'm working on the posing because it takes time to pose a character. So I'm going to be skipping towards when I finish posing the character. If you're all set, you can see what's the next step. Until then, pose your character, make it look nice, and see you in the next step. Alright, so I finished posing my character. I tried my best with the posing. It's not very good, but I can live with it. So our next step is to export the layers that we're going to be using for the shading. What you want to do first of all is export the base image. To do so, we're going to have to turn off the 3D aspect of the rendering, which is ambient occlusion. To turn off ambient occlusion, what you want to do is right click your viewport, click render settings, and then at the very bottom within render settings you're going to be seeing ambient occlusion. Just take that off for now. We're going to be enabling it later on for a whole different reason, but for now what you want to do is turn it off. Once you turn it off, you're going to see that the model got this nice flat look to it. That's exactly what we want. We want it to look as flat as possible. So your next step is to add a white background to the model. This background is just going to be a placeholder for while we are shading the model. So I'm going to be linking this white screen in the description. Basically, you're just going to add this model, position it at the back, and just select skin 4 so it can be white. And also make sure within your camera settings you turn off bloom. We don't want bloom on, so just make sure that's off. Once you've done all these steps, you're ready to export your first portion of the cel shading, which is the base image. When you're all set, just go to File, Export, Poster, and then make sure it's PNG. Set the size to whatever you want. Normally I export at 3840 by 2160. Save it to a folder, create a new folder. You just save it somewhere basically. Make sure you name it base, by the way. This is the base of the cel shading, so just name it base. And once you did that, just hit export and it's gonna be exporting. When you finally exported your first image, now what you want to do is export the outline portion of your shading. So to export the outline portion, just right click your viewport again and then go to ambient occlusion, turn that back on, and then set it from AO only to outline only. This is gonna give it a nice basic outline effect to your image. we're going to be using this as a placeholder. We're going to be drawing our own outlines because this outlines, it doesn't look good. It doesn't do the job. So we're going to be drawing our own outlines. So for the meantime, we're going to be using this as a reference to the outlines that we want. So once you've done all of that, just export it again, and this time name it outline instead of base. Alright, so once you've finished exporting the outline, what you want to do now is turn off the outline. So just turn off ambient occlusion, basically. That's how you're going to get rid of it. And your next step is to create the shadows. To create the shadows, what you want to do is enable the lighting first of all. Create a new light. And in the light, what you want to do is change the settings, shadow at 10, drag it all the way down, shadow filter size, set it to 0.01, and increase constant attenuation and linear attenuation. Once you've done all of that, what you want to do is position the light where you want the shadows to be. Basically, the way this is going to work is the black parts are going to be the shadow, and the white parts of it are going to be they're gonna be disappeared. Basically, they're not gonna be there. Position it to your liking. Right now I'm trying to position it based on the ref. If you can't get it to your liking, don't worry, we're gonna be able to draw the shadows in post if you're not gonna get it to your liking. My shadows, I'm not happy with it, so we're gonna be drawing them in Photoshop. I'm gonna be showing you how to do that once I finish and export the shadows. Once you've positioned your shadow to your liking, what you want to do is go to your console. In the console, type matte _ Fulbright space 2. That's going to get rid of any color within your poster, and it's going to leave it black and white. So that's what you want to do, so we can remove the color and keep it black and white. Once you enter the console command, just be sure to move your camera around so we can actually apply the command, because for some reason if you hit enter it's not going to apply immediately. So once you've done that, all you have to do is export it and name it shadow. Now the last thing that you want to export within SFM is a mask. So basically just make sure ambient occlusion is off and delete the light that you've recently created, and just export it black and white. The reason for this is we're going to be using this to remove the white background without exactly ruining the outlines or the outside pixels of the base image, because if we try to select it manually within Photoshop, it's going to ruin the outside. So this is going to help us export it while keeping it look good and not ruined, basically. Alright, once you've rendered all 4 of your images, what you want to do now is open Photoshop. Within Photoshop or whatever photo editing software you use, you want to open the images in this order, starting with the base, the second being the outline, and the third being the shadows. So in that order: base, outline, shadows. Once you've inserted everything, when you pick your shadow layer and you change the blend mode to multiply, that's going to get rid of the whites and keep the blacks, which gives it this nice shadow effect. So you can test it and see if it's to your liking. If it's to your liking, then you can move on. If not, you have 2 options, which is to re-render the shadows in SFM, or wait towards down the line in the video when I start demonstrating how to draw over the shadows within your editing software. Shadows aside, I want to focus on the outline. So the outline that we've exported within SFM, it looks horrible, it looks bad, it doesn't pop. So what I want you to do is go to Filter and then Filter Gallery. And then from there, I want you to select Photocopy. Adjust it so it shows proper results for your outline. You're not going to be using this outline, it's just a reference. You're going to be drawing your outline, but this is going to be the reference to the outline. So just adjust it, make it pop basically to your liking. And then once you're done with that, hit OK. You're going to have this nice black and white image of the outline. If you set it to multiply, just like the shadows, it's going to get rid of the white and keep the black, and you're going to see how it's going to look as an outline. It looks okay from far away, but up close it is very grainy. There's a lot of parts missing of it, and overall it's not perfect, and we want to perfect it. So what you're gonna do is use that as a reference to drawing your outline. You want to real quick create a new layer, and using that layer, that's where you're gonna draw your outline. And the way that you're gonna draw your outline, in my opinion, what I think is the best way, is to use the pen tool within Photoshop. Allow me to demonstrate the pen tool real quick so you can get a basic idea of how it works. Alright, so this is the pen tool over here. The pen tool is a tool in Photoshop that is used to create a series of points that you can use to create shapes just by clicking. As you can see, I'm clicking right now and I can create all sorts of shapes with it. I can also create curves using the pen tool by clicking and dragging across the screen. Now here's where the magic begins. You just want to make sure that your paintbrush size is around between 4 to 6, okay? And make sure your foreground color and background color is black and white. And then using the pen tool, right click and then pick stroke path. This thing is going to pop up, just hit OK, and then you're going to see that it created an outline using the path that we've created. We're going to be doing this for creating our outlines within the cel shade. It might take forever, it might take a long time to actually accomplish this, but at the end it's going to be worth it. If you look closely between these two lines that I've created, the one on the left is the one that we've exported from SFM. The one on the right is the one that we've created using the pen tool. You can see how better the one that we created using pen tool looks. It's not very pixelated, it is very smooth, and in my opinion, it makes it look 100 times better. So this is how we're going to be drawing our outlines within Photoshop or whatever software you're using. So, as I described it, I'd say between the brush size of 4 and 6 is what works best. It depends on what you're going for, obviously. If you want thick outlines, you can go with 6, maybe even higher. But if you want like thin outlines, you can do like 4. I used all of them. It really depends on what you're trying to go for. I'm gonna be using, I believe, 5 in this one that I'm working at right now. So as you can see, I'm gonna start tracing the outline, and I'm gonna be doing this for the whole, all of the outlines basically. In a new layer, just draw new outlines. So I'm gonna be speeding this up or cutting it, I'm not sure, I'm gonna actually keep a bit of the clips just to demonstrate what I'm doing and how I'm doing it, and then I'm gonna be cutting it in like a minute or so just to continue with the tutorial. So you can stick around for a minute and see what's happening, or if you want, you can skip it. It's really up to you. I finished creating my outlines. As you can see, it looks a lot better than the one exported from SFM. It is less pixelated, it is a lot smoother, it looks better. So this is why we drew our own outlines instead of using the one in SFM. Now I'm going to be working on the shadows and fix it up because I'm not very happy with the SFM exported shadows that I've got. It is recommended to fix up the shadows that you've exported, because normally the ones that you export within SFM does not look 100% good. You can keep it if you want, you can like fix it up slightly if you want, but I'm gonna be like redrawing it as a whole. I'm gonna be adding like new parts of the shadow. I'm gonna make it look a lot better. I'm gonna follow the reference that I have, try to replicate the shadows that's from the reference, and see if it turns out well. So when creating the shadows, keep in mind the shadow layer is just a black and white image. where the black is basically the shadow and the white is just, I guess, the transparent part. It's just not there. If you want to create shadows, all you have to do is select the polygon tool or the pen tool, whatever you're comfortable with. Create a quick selection, then just paint over it. That's going to be creating a shadow in that area. Paint over it black, keep in mind. If you want to remove a certain part of the shadow, what you want to do is use a white brush tool and create a selection in the area that you want to remove and just draw over it. That's going to get rid of the areas that you don't want. I'm going to be keeping a minute worth of footage just to demonstrate what I'm doing. You can feel free to watch me if you want, or you can skip ahead. The choice is really yours, but I'd recommend watching it so you can get a grip or an idea of how to work with shadows. Basically, the black brush adds the shadows and the white brush removes the shadows. Use the pen tool and the polygon lasso tool to create your shadows, create the shapes of your shadows, and that's honestly about it. It's not very hard. So I'm gonna be keeping a clip, a minute worth of a clip, so you can get an idea of what's happening. Feel free to skip. The choice is yours. Alright, so I finished creating my shadows. As you can tell, I tried my best to follow my reference that I was using to make it look somewhat identical. So what you want to do now is you want to create a group with all of the layers. To do so, just select all of the layers and just hit the folder icon that's next to the create a new layer button while selecting all of the layers. That's gonna group all of it together, and once you do that, what you want to do then is duplicate that group. I'm telling you to do this for the sake of backup. Like, let's say you want to go back to a previous group where you didn't do something, where you didn't screw something up. I personally like keeping groups for the sake of backup, so just do that real quick. Also, in the new group, be sure to delete the outline layer that you exported from SFM. We don't need that anymore because we drew on our own outline, so just delete it, get rid of it. We're not gonna need it anymore. Your next step is to color the shadows. You have several options when it comes to coloring the shadows. The options is you can leave them the way they are, like leave them gray, which is not coloring them at all. Some animes actually do that. Some animes tend to like just have gray shadows with nothing in them. My reference that I'm using, the shadows are just gray, so you can do that if you want, if you're lazy and you just don't want to continue. If you choose this option, you can skip this part and just go immediately into working on the background, or you can stay and see the other options, which the other options are you can color all of the shadows as a whole. Just instead of keeping them gray, give them a nice color. To give them a color, what you can do is add an adjustment layer. The adjustment layer is going to be a hue saturation. Create a clipping mask for the shadow layer. So basically, it's not going to impact everything. It's going to impact only the shadow layer. Okay? Once you do that, what you want to do is take the colorize, increase the saturation and brightness, and then mess with the color option right on top. Find a color that suits you. Your next option is to separate the clothing from the skin color, basically. The clothing is going to have its own color, while the skin is going to also have its own color. So to do so, what you want to first of all do is duplicate the shadow layer, okay? Name one of them skin color, name the other one clothing color. After that, in the let's say the clothing color, what you want to do is delete anything, not delete, color anything that is not the clothes white. So in my case, I'm going to use the polygon or the pen tool, either or. I'm going to be selecting the skin components, and then I'm going to draw over them white because I don't want them. This is going to be for the clothing only, not for the skin. So you want to do that real quick, and once you finish that, you want to do the exact same thing for the clothing, but instead of removing the skin, you're removing the clothing and keeping the skin. So basically you're doing the opposite of the previous one. We're doing this so we can easily color them separately as different layers instead of, well, there's no instead of, that's kind of the only option. Separate them from each other, basically. Alright, so after you finished separating the shadow layers from the skin layers, what you want to do next is duplicate the new group that you've created again. Again, it's for backup, just to be safe. And then insert adjustment layers for hue saturation on top of both layers. So one on top of the skin layer, the other one on top of the clothing layer. And ensure that they're clipping. They're a clipping mask, so it only affects the layers they're on top of. Once you do that, just like before, turn on colorize, increase the brightness and saturation, and then color them. Ensure they're not the same layer color, ensure they're two different colors. This makes the cel shading look a lot better and makes it look more dynamic. And that's about it. You color the shadows. So up next, what we're going to do is we're going to be removing the background and inserting our own background. Removing the background is not hard. It's pretty easy and straightforward. To remove the background, what you want to do is remember the black and white image that you've exported and named it mask. What you want to do is drag that in to Photoshop. And from there on out, what you want to do is go to select, and then from select you hit color range, and then from there on out you select the white, you click on the white background. What you want to do is set the fuzziness all the way to max, and you should have selected the background. If there's any other white that you've selected on accident besides the background, just deselect it. And then from there on out, what you want to do is hide that layer and then go to your base, which is supposed to be the very first image. And then from there on out, what you want to hit is delete. That's about it. You deleted the background. Pretty straightforward, right? It's not hard at all. After removing the background, you have a couple of choices now. You can either snag a random Google Images picture and just give it some blur and call it a day. Or what you can do is create your own image background in SFM and use that instead. That's what I'm going to be doing when it comes to the background. I'm going to be creating my own in SFM. I'm going to see if I can replicate the reference. I'll be showing you guys in the background exactly what I'm doing in SFM, making the background and stuff like that. And then from there on out, we're going to be doing some post-processings for the image, like some, we're going to give it some bloom, we're going to give it some blur, we're going to give some depth field, fix the colors a bit. We're going to change a couple of stuff, and then I'd say we're going to be done. So now what I'm doing is I'm using this model of Capsule Corp map from Dragon Ball. I'm going to be using this model for my background, and I'm trying to find a sky to insert. So once I found my sky, I'm going to insert it, whatever works for me. And then I'm just gonna add some light, and I'm just gonna export it. And then from there, I'm gonna drag and drop it into Photoshop, and I'm gonna continue some post-processing in Photoshop. So first thing I do is I'm gonna duplicate the group again for the sake of having a backup, because over here I'm just gonna make a lot of changes to the image as a whole. Then what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna pull up the background right now and drag it and drop it. So I dragged it and dropped it. I'm gonna put it all the way down at the base layer. And then I want to start adjusting it, making it a bit bigger to my liking. So after I resize it, I'm going to put it back all the way down again. And then what I'm going to do afterwards is I'm going to select the background. And what I want to do is I'm going to give it some blur, Gaussian blur. Once I give it Gaussian blur so I can keep it off focus, what I'm going to do is I'm going to change its colors for it to be more greenish rather than bluish. Change the shadow colors, change the midtones, change the highlights. Just aiming for a green tone rather than a normal blue tone that it originally had. Once I do that, I'm going to be duplicating the group again, and then I'm going to be flattening the group, merging all of the layers together so it's one image. And then from there on out, I'm gonna start doing some minor adjustments. Like I want to try giving it bloom over here. So I try giving it bloom, but it doesn't exactly work out to my liking. So I simply scrap the idea of putting bloom over this image. So I scrap the idea of using bloom. I add a curves layer to darken the image as a whole a little bit. Then I'm messing with brightness and contrast. I'm trying to darken the image as a whole and make it pop a little more, be more dynamic. I scrapped the idea of curves because it didn't work out for me. And then my next step is to give the image a little bit of grain. So I'm gonna go to camera raw filters. I'm gonna mess with the settings of it to my liking. You guys can do whatever you want after this process. Basically, you finish cel shading your image, so it's just all post-processing, changing this stuff like brightness, contrast, make stuff be more vibrant, make it less vibrant. That's basically it. Once you're done with your image, just feel free to export it. You're all set. Everything that I'm saying towards the end, like color adjustments, stuff like that, it's optional once you finish the cel shading as a whole. You don't have to do that. Once you add the background, you can do whatever you want afterwards. That choice is really yours. I'm not gonna say what is right and what is wrong. When I tend to cel shade, I just do whatever I think looks good. I don't exactly go with no, this is the right way or this is the wrong way, do this. I don't go with that. What I think looks good, I just go with it. So yeah, you learned how to cel shade. Congratulations. Thank you so much for watching this video. I hope this helped you out. If it did, give it a thumbs up. If it did not help you out, just let me know in the comments what the issue was. I'll try to help you out. And see you guys around. Goodbye.